Well, hello everyone and welcome to Momentum channel. My name is Mo, and in this video, I'm super excited to have with us a successful young entrepreneur, David, who's accepted my invite. Welcome to the show, David.
Nice to be here. Well, my pleasure.
Yeah, it's a pleasure for us to have you on the show. David, why don't you kick us off by providing a quick intro of yourself, what you do, and let us know more about yourself.
Well, my name is David, and I like to describe myself as a serial entrepreneur. It's been a couple of years now, but I basically have a marketing background in a marketing firm. And what we do is we invest or buy out businesses which we think have a lot of potential for growth with just kind of the right marketing tools applied to them. And then we grow them and we either position to be sold or we hang on to them for as long as we're happy working with them. So.
That's amazing, David. So, how did you get started with that in the first place? I obviously, as you said, you call yourself a serial entrepreneur. What motivated you to begin with it? When did you start, and how did it all start in the first place?
Yeah, it's actually started really, really early for me. And it's a bit of a crazy story, but when I was younger, probably about 13 or 14, our family was really, really poor. And I really, really, really liked playing video games. So I just needed to find a way to be able to get to play video games. And this was way, way back in like the 1990s. I went to my English teacher and I said to her, I'm like, hey, I want to see if I can get these video game companies to let me review their products. What should I do? And she said, well, tell them that you have something to offer them that is invaluable. So I decided to start a GeoCities review website. And I emailed these companies. It started off with Core Design, who was the developers of the Tomb Raider games, which I was a really big fan of back then. And I told them about this website. I told them, hey, listen, if you send me something, I will review it for you and just put up a quick post for it. And sure enough, they sent me a free video game. So that kind of started things off. So I started emailing all of the big game companies, and probably for 3 or 4 years, every single day, I would come home to 3 or 4 video games in my mailbox. And I eventually just had to start giving them away to my friends. But that's kind of what started it off. It was really, really early into web design. I learned how to program, I learned HTML. And then as web programming kind of developed, I started learning graphics design. And that kind of what set the foundation for my marketing and design background.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And starting at such a young age, really getting started. How did that evolve like over time? Was it like truly what you were expecting from that experience?
Yeah, it was definitely an evolution. So I started working on 4 companies. So I was doing a lot of marketing for local companies like Evelyn Charles. I was part of the team that brought Pelican products, which are the cases those that camera people wear. We brought that into Canada with a really, really cool team of executives. And while I was at one of these jobs, I just remember being there for 50 hours or 60 hours one week. And then the CEO saw me as she was leaving at 10:30 at night. And then I was 5 minutes late the next day. And they made a big deal about it. I just remember thinking like, this is not for me. I am not okay with putting in this many hours and this much of my effort to make someone else extremely wealthy when I know that I have the tools, the capacity, and passion to do it myself. So from there on out, I decided I was going to do my own thing. So I started building websites and I'm doing graphics designs, here and there as a freelancer. But then when I was about 25, I got the brilliant idea that, you know what, I want some bigger ownership stakes. So I started approaching local companies, again, like that were well positioned for growth. And in exchange for my services as their marketing director, I'd ask for shares instead of getting paid a salary. So I've been lucky to be involved with some really, really exciting companies. Capital Vision Care is a big optometry chain here in Edmonton. And I was with them when they were at 3 locations. And in the last 5 years, we've grown them to 6 locations. And then I eventually bought Happy Veggie World, which is our vegan food company. And that vegan food company eventually grew and we had a need for transportation. So we bought out a transportation company called Cavalli. So there's just been a lot of organic growth. But again, the same business principles have been applied to each of those businesses, and we've just been taking it from there.
So you always had that vision to actually wanting to be your own boss and wanting to really pursue what you're passionate about and really owning the businesses. Did you? Where is the limit for David? What is the ultimate goal for David?
That's a good question. I don't know. I really want to see kind of where these businesses take me. Uh, people always have these visions of becoming like a world billionaire and living on yachts and traveling the world. But I think the older I get, and I know this sounds crazy, but like the more privileged you become and the more access you have to things, the more you realize that it's okay to be simpler. Have a simple bit of a like. I used to be obsessed with fashion, but now I just wear a black t-shirt and jeans every day. So things evolve. So I'm not sure. I don't know what the ultimate goal is, but I know that I want to keep growing these businesses that I have. Happy Veggie World is on a huge trajectory. As you know, vegan food industry is just really taking off. But we've been in the business for a really long time. Even before I purchased the company, the previous owner had been running it for 25 years.
Wow.
So they were doing it before vegan food was cool. And we think we have a really great product, and more people are starting to discover it. So
That's amazing. That's amazing, David. I would imagine, all these glory successes that you've now reached already didn't come so easy. Probably along the way, you faced some obstacles and challenges. Do you mind sharing some of those? And how did you overcome those obstacles along the way?
yeah, I think there are a lot of challenges when you're working with a bunch of different industries. They all come with their own kind of nuances and industry secrets that you kind of have to become aware of. But I've also learned a lot from them. So working in the beauty industry, for example, I really instilled a sense of excellent customer service. We always used to talk about delivering a 5-star experience. And we used to model ourselves after like the Ritz-Carlton program. So we learn to implement language into our day-to-day customer service, like my pleasure, it's absolutely no problem, things like that. So I've been able to kind of take those skill sets and apply them across the different businesses. So at Capital Vision Care, we have a huge focus on developing a well-rounded and 5-star customer service experience. And that transcends as well, to all of our other businesses. Some of the other challenges is technology moves so fast. And if you're not in it on a day-to-day basis, it's just like speaking a second language. You completely forget it. I was up to speed with HTML and CSS, and I stopped doing that for a little while and started outsourcing it. And then somebody came to me with a really simple problem, and I was completely lost. So I had to kind of relearn that as I was going. And there are a lot of challenges to running a business that you're just not going to know unless you either get some formal education or have some really great mentors. So even something as simple as working on a board or developing a board for your company, having an operational board, things like that were things that I had to learn along the way. But thankfully, I've had some amazing mentors in my life, people who I can really kind of count on to answer questions or to get feedback on or to get their insight on. So I've been really fortunate to have that.
What are some of those key qualities in your perspective, David, that an entrepreneur needs to have to succeed?
I think my answer might surprise you because I think listening to a lot of famous entrepreneurs and famous CEOs, you're going to hear a lot of things about like, you have to get up at 5 a.m. every morning and grind it out, write down your goals before you go to sleep. And I tried that for a really long time, but I think the key to my success has been really being completely honest with myself and getting a really good sense of what my true weaknesses are and what my strengths are, and then playing those up or filling in the gaps. I think a lot of CEOs want to be the star of the room, but for example, I'm not a morning person. I work best at nighttime, so I don't start work at 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. or anything like that. I don't start until 10, but then I'll work until 3 in the morning. I am really good at big picture, strategic thinking, creative processes. but I'm terrible with details. And I'm really also really bad at finishing things that I start. I am ADHD, so my trajectory of like interest, it's like, yes, we're going to go, 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 and then it'll plateau and it'll sharply decline. So recognizing that about myself, and rather than trying just being really uncomfortable and trying to force myself through that, the best thing I did was just hire detail-oriented people around me. So my operations director and my executive assistant are super talented, managing my calendar, replying to emails and text messages. These are all things that I'm not good at. But I think if I was to put my ego ahead of that and just try to kind of force my way through, I probably would have progressed a lot slower. There would be a lot of unfinished projects sitting on my desk. But yeah, I think it's really, really being introspective and coming to terms with, honestly, what are your strengths? What are you going to be? What are your hours best put in towards? And then what are some tasks and, what glory can you pass on to somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. That's great. That's such a great advice, and thanks for sharing that. What has been your proudest moment in your entrepreneurial journey so far, David?
We had a lot of really great milestones. It's always good when your startup hits these milestones. Like our first $1 million year, and then our first $5 million year, whatever. Those are all great. But the best moment I've ever had as an entrepreneur was at Happy Veggie World, when we became profitable enough to be able to offer our employees benefits. I just thought it was such a cool feeling to know that you were having such a positive impact on people's lives, and being able to help them, get their basic needs taken care of, above and beyond kind of what their salary would do. So that was really exciting. And I always think about that day because I just remember being in that meeting like, hey, this is an option for us now. And I know that they were super grateful for it. And it's something that I think is really important.
So that's so amazing. That's such a great feeling. I can only imagine. Your business is growing to the point where not only you are profitable and successful in terms of all the financial metrics, but you're also able to provide for your employees and take care of them as well as one of your greatest assets, I would imagine. What are some of the key lessons you've learned, David, along the way? You've been in entrepreneurial journey, I think, since almost 13, as you mentioned it. So what have been some of your key lessons?
Aside from the things that we spoke about, surrounding yourself with people who are smarter and more talented than you is absolutely really important. Doing your research and kind of becoming an expert on the industry that you're working in is really, really important. I think one of the biggest challenges actually that we came back to is when I got into food distribution, I think there were a lot of things that we did that we thought worked well, because in the beauty industry, we did warehousing and logistics a certain way, but the food industry has its own entire system. It's like the mafia. They have their own way of doing things. There are certain secrets that you need to know. And if you don't know them, you're just kind of out of the loop. So we had to learn that, working with food brokers, how does that work? Working with food distributors like GFS and Cisco, what are their rules and responsibilities? So we became experts on the CFIA, like what kind of labeling guidelines do we have? So we really, really did have to learn all that inside and out, because once you kind of come to grips with your industry standards, you're able to kind of position yourself in such a way that can grow with as few obstacles as possible. But we learned a lot of those lessons the hard way. Another thing that I learned, this is probably a bit more technical, is really focus on your cash flow. I think it's a really good thing that you're making a lot of money, a lot of profit. But if your cash flow isn't there to support your growth, you're going to stall. And we learned this the hard way, again, getting into the food industry. Our manufacturing has a lot of upfront costs. And we do a lot of importing of materials from overseas. So we do a lot of upfront payments for our AP. But then all of our vendors have 45, 60-day terms. So our cash conversion cycle was like 75 days. So we were always behind on our cash flow. And once we recognized that was a problem, we obviously had to make some changes, change our AR rules, changed the negotiations tactics that we were doing for all of our manufacturing. And once we got that into place, it made our growth a lot more easy to do. So.
And how did you, David, go about picking that right industry or right business to get into? Is it yourself who do a lot of the research? How do you go to that, from that initiation to ultimately deciding where to enter the market or the business?
Yeah, quite frankly, a lot of it has just been to do with things that I'm interested in. So the glasses industry was very much because I came into it from a fashion perspective. So I was introduced to them through one of their vendors. So that was really fun. Happy Veggie World was a complete fluke. I was talking to one of my friends who is a financial planner for, I can't remember the name of the firm, but he's a financial planner. And we were eating at a restaurant called Padmanati's. And I was just eating the food. And I was like, what is this? This tastes like real meat. It's so good. And I needed to find out where it was from. So I did. And I found out it was Happy Veggie World, which is this amazing little company that was started by this Asian couple who worked at a Buddhist temple, and all they ever wanted was to be able to provide vegetarian food for their community. So they were doing literally $100,000 of revenue for 20 years with this amazing product. They had no idea what they had on their hands. So I offered to partner with them, and they were just like, you know what, we're ready to retire. Why don't you just take the company? So I said, absolutely. And we grew that business from that $100,000 per year within the first year to $2 million. And then it's just been growing exponentially ever since then. And like I said, the rest of our businesses have just been organic extensions of the other businesses that we have. So we have, for example, glasses kiosks in shopping malls, and then we have a transportation company, and then we have a freezer storage company. So they've all just been kind of organically added to our portfolio. So, but of course, if there's anything that comes our way, we're always open to looking at it. So.
That's amazing. I do see definitely that curiosity from you, and really, keeping your eyes open for opportunities. Like, I've been to Padmanati, definitely love their meals and their food. But you taking that on to the next step, like really being curious about it and finding out where does it come from, and then really doing the research around it. It's amazing. And couple that idea with the idea of being interested in that business or topic or field. I think that's definitely a good recipe for success.
Yeah, I definitely think you have to have some sort of interest in the products and services that you're selling. Otherwise, it becomes really tedious. But one of the exciting things about business, though, is that you're right, each industry has its own thing and you should be passionate about it. But a lot of the business principles that apply to one industry for success will be completely transferable to another industry. So we always talk about the importance of having really good and strong branding, being able to deliver and communicate value to your customers. Mm-hmm. Like, these are business principles that will apply to glasses, to vegan food, to shampoos and windshields, like anything that you can think of. They all kind of come back to the same basic business principles across the board. So.
Do you have any fears when you are deciding to get into any of these businesses, David? And if not, why not? And how you overcome that fear?
Yeah, no, I don't. I've had businesses, not full businesses, but I've had, I guess, services that we've introduced to businesses and products that we've introduced that have completely failed. But I remember reading an article way back when about fail fast. So fail fast. So we always say that, like, okay, if it's not going to work, we are not going to dwell on our sunk costs. We're just going to cut it loose and go. So I think we're fortunate enough to be in a position where if something fails, we've done the risk assessment beforehand, so it's not going to completely bankrupt us. So we don't really go into anything, being worried that it's going to completely, bring our businesses down to our knees. I think again, that research and that preparation will definitely help with that. But there's also a lot of excitement. My team is really excited about new products and new services. Capital Vision Care has been really pioneering a lot of new technology and a lot of new services in the eye care industry. And that is really, really exciting. And we have some amazing team members who are very influential in the industry, who are able to bring new ideas to the table. So yeah, we've had a lot of new startups that are really exciting. We've also had a lot of things that have failed and have fallen flat on their faces, but we're okay with that too.
Do you see yourself expanding to multiple different industries as well over the long term?
Yeah, I'm always interested in what's up and coming in technology. I think my fear personally about getting into technology as a business owner is like, what can I bring to the table? I think a lot of these small app companies that we've talked to, we've been able to kind of support them in small marketing efforts, but nothing like, oh, we can bring new operations procedures to your, introduce new efficiencies. We can't do any of that. So I'd rather be silent investors in those types of businesses. But as far as any other new industries that come our way, I'm always open to hearing ideas. And if we can bring some value to it and can help that company grow, we're in. So
does David think that one day he could be, if he's not already, a Shark Tank or a Dragon's Den kind of person? Is that something that
I love
excites
those
you?
shows. Yeah, it's so funny. I was just watching a bunch of clips of Dragon's Den and Shark Tank right before this. And I was thinking to myself, you know what, this is really interesting having people pitch, in succession like this. But the clips that I was watching specifically were a bunch of people who were pitching scams. And I just thought it was so funny that like there's that these people have, I guess their vision of kind of get rich quick schemes. And that's never been my goal. It's never been my way of doing business. But like I said, certainly if somebody wants to pitch me an idea, and we have been pitched ideas, and we've helped invest in a lot of different smaller companies already. But I am completely open to it. So I'll put my contact information below. So.
That's amazing. This is a question that probably was not on my initial list of questions, but as we are talking about it, I'm curious, David, for you, and you have very unique perspective as well. What does success look like? How do you define success for yourself as an entrepreneur?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's changed a lot. It used to be how much money we were making. Again, we've had a lot of milestones. We set a lot of goals for ourselves. How many locations do we have? How many customers are in our database? I used to be really, really focused on that. But recently, I think my idea of success has changed in that there was always this vision of what it meant to have financial freedom, that you're going to be able to do whatever you want, whenever you want. And that was a really big part of the reason why I wanted to become an entrepreneur. But I think more recently, especially with this last year with the pandemic, and there's been a huge shift, and within myself personally, a focus on my mental health and what that means for my day-to-day. Like having a lot of freedom is great, but it also comes with a lack of structure sometimes. And you can kind of find yourself languishing day to day, and everything kind of just starts feeling the same. So I think right now I'm really focused on what I can do to contribute to people around me. I know this sounds so cheesy, but I think everybody kind of wants to find a feel-good thing that they can do. But right now, I'm really focused on my immediate inner circle. The people who are closest to me, who I can have a bigger impact on, rather than just focusing on major world issues. I'm a social justice warrior, so it's really easy for me to find causes that I'm excited about. But yeah, I think those are the biggest thing, is finding value in your day-to-day, finding ways that you can contribute to people's lives. Those things are really kind of what set you up for success. The financial freedom is great. But I don't think it does anything to, to stop you from having, days of like depression or anything like that. So those are definitely things that have shifted for me as I became more and more successful.
Thanks for sharing that, David. Who are your role models in your life, David, if you can share with us, and why, perhaps?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of celebrity role models. I know I see a lot of people who are, quote, like like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and Elon Musk. I think they're great at what they do. And but I don't think there's anything particularly special about them as individuals. I think, again, they follow really great business principles and have a really talented group of people around them. But I have an adoptive grandparent who actually sponsored our family over to Canada. He's a corporate lawyer, completely lucked out there. So as I was growing up, he always gave me really, really great advice. I talk to him on a monthly basis. We touch base. I tell him kind of some of the problems I'm having. He gives me his professional and personal opinion. And yeah, he's definitely my greatest influence. His name is Bob Teskey. I'll shut him out there. So yeah.
Thanks, David. You earlier on, you touched on the importance of research. So I'm excited to ask this question. What are some of the most influential or favorite books or other resources that really have helped you on your entrepreneurial journey, or perhaps in your life?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think the one that really kind of set me over the edge, and I'm sure you guys hear this about a million times because it's such a stereotypical book. It's the 4-Hour Work Week, but it really kind of instilled in me that idea of outsourcing work and making sure that you're putting your talents and your hours into doing the thing that is most valuable. I'm gonna actually pull up my list. I have a list of books that I keep track of. Okay, so it's the 4-Hour Work Week, Extreme Ownership, amazing. Start with Why, also a really, really good book. Never Split the Difference. I am not a great negotiator, so I think I've gotten a lot better at it. But I think I'm starting off, I'm a bit of a people pleaser, which is not a great strength when you're negotiating. But that book really kind of set some really clear guidelines for me. So I would really encourage you guys reading that. And then Good to Great. Good to Great was a really interesting concept. We worked with a consultant on Good to Great while I was at Evelyn Charles. And it really transformed the way we did business there. So those are some books that really influenced me. And then, yeah, I think those are it.
On a regular basis, do you still listen to any podcasts or have a source where you go to read more around any topic that helps you?
So I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I run every day. So when I'm doing my runs or when I'm driving, I listen to audiobooks. So I'm constantly listening to whatever is new and recommended to me. Right now, I'm listening to How I Built This and A Promised Land by the book by Obama. So yeah, I'm constantly listening to audiobooks. There are a lot of podcasts that I listen to, but not a lot of them are business related. They're more kind of like entertainment.
Different topics. Yeah. That's awesome. David, do you have any regrets in any of your business decisions, or to put it maybe in a different language or wording, if you were to start all over again, would you change anything?
Not about my particular journey. I think I've come across some business practices along the way that I wish I had spoken out on before. Things that made me uncomfortable or that I wasn't happy with. I kind of stayed quiet about them early on in my career, but I think that's pretty common when people are coming out of school and wanting to make a good impression. But I think it's important that if you see something that you doesn't feel right or doesn't sit right with you, that you speak up, because it can often have a positive impact, for the people around you or even for your career. So yeah, I think that would be the only thing I'd change along the way, is just be more outspoken about things that I wasn't comfortable with. But as far as my actual career path goes, I'm completely happy with it, because even in the crappy jobs that I've had along the way, I've learned a lot of lessons that I've been able to apply to my own businesses. So
that's the right attitude.
Whether it's things like what makes a good manager, but also things that make a bad manager, so I make sure that I don't do the things that I didn't like having done to me. And I think that's translated really well to how our operations are run. So
that reflection and learning along the way is so important. How you kind of internalize what you learn. To your point, even sometimes, even those horrible bosses or business partners or whoever that you come across, that also teaches you something and how you learn from it, and really maybe based on your own values or ethics, whether you want to continue that or not at all, really helps you along the way.
Yeah. And I really would encourage people to reflect on that. When you have failures or come across, negative interactions with people, kind of reflect on it and see what you can take away. For example, I learned that micromanaging doesn't help, because I worked with a micromanaging manager once before, and I promised myself that I would never do that to somebody else. And I think honestly, a lot of our success has been that me putting trust in the people around me and not thinking that I'm the smartest person in the room. And sometimes when they give me advice that goes against what I believed in, I'll let them go with it. And often it's turned out way better for me and for the people around me. So, yeah.
That's great. David, one last question that I do have for you is around perhaps the importance of mentorship. You mentioned that you have have had a lot of mentors in your life. How important, in your opinion, is having a mentor, especially for an entrepreneur as they are pursuing that entrepreneurship journey?
It's absolutely invaluable. I think being an entrepreneur, especially a certain type of entrepreneur, you come with a bit of an ego. I mean, can be a bit narcissistic. Sometimes you come into it being, I know everything but everything. Especially, I've worked with people coming up that says, I got my business this far, I can get it further, right? But the truth is, sometimes you hit roadblocks. So it's good to be able to bounce your ideas off of people. And like I said, I did a lot of learning on the way. I don't have a lot of formal education, so I was kind of like I said, learning business structure, finances, marketing, all these kinds of things as I was coming up. But learning to be humble and learning that people around you, are going to be smarter than you is so important. I'm trying to think of one particular lesson that I learned, probably in food services, was that we had designed these beautiful labels. And I just remember thinking from a design perspective, like these are it. This is going to kill it. And I pushed it through, and I went finally to throw it to my mentor, and they said, this isn't going to work. I'm like, what? We just spent $20,000 designing this. What do you mean it's not going to work? And he said, well, you have to remember that your product is going to be standing behind freezer doors, which sometimes frost up. And then these are not going to show through them. Like, I never would have known that. I would have just invested the $20,000 of designing it, and then like $100,000 printing these bags, and they would have been completely useless. So yeah, it's really good to make sure that you are talking to people who know more than you do. So,
is there any final word of advice, thoughts, or anything else, David, you'd like to share with our viewers here on Moementum channel?
I think we covered a lot of it, but I think if I were to reiterate anything is just be really honest with yourself about what type of entrepreneur you're going to be. I think there is a lot of messaging out there that says you have to do things a certain way in order to be successful. But the truth is that certain way isn't going to work for everybody. Like you might be introverted, and people say, oh, you have to be extroverted to be a successful entrepreneur. That's not necessarily the case. You don't need to get up at a certain time every single day. You just got to be honest with it and make sure that you are playing to your strengths and then filling in your weaknesses. So that would be my biggest piece of advice. And I say would be the most important thing that I've learned through my entrepreneurship journey.
Thank you so much, David, for joining us here on the show. We had a lot of fun having you on the show as well. I learned a lot even during this short interview with you. Thanks again for accepting my invite and joining the show, and we look forward to learning more about your products and follow along your journey in your successful entrepreneurship journey. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Mo. It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much, guys, for watching this episode of Moementum Mondays. I hope it was valuable to you and you learned something from it. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might benefit from the video as well. We've added the contact link to our invited guests to the description of the video, so be sure to check them out. And lastly, if you haven't done that already, please subscribe to Moementum channel. Here on Moementum, we post weekly various videos about the stock market investing, stock analysis, financial planning, and finances. Thank you, and I hope to see you next time.